Okay, so I will slowly get started. This is Stefan's 24th photo book show. 24, can you imagine, Stefan? That's amazing. Yeah, exactly. Time goes by so fast. So I'm excited that you are doing this already for a while and that you keep doing it. So today's theme is Provoke, Daido Moriyama and Beyond. And for those of you who are new, Stefan is an artist and educator living in Germany, and he teaches several classes for StrudelmediaLive, from a class on gestalting photography to surrealism, and mentoring intensive and landscape and all kinds of different things. Um, Most of you know I'm Anja from StrudelmediaLive, and we offer online classes, but we also offer a lot of talks, and we also give out scholarships. Back to Stefan, Stefan's photo book show. That's why we are here today. The talk will be about 75 minutes long. I always hesitate when I say that. And I think that's it. So, Stefan, thank you so much for doing this, and thank you all for being here. I will turn it over to Stefan.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you, everybody, for being here today. As you see here on this little label here, we're here for Provoke today, for Daidō Moriyama. And yeah, this is a personal one. This has been quite a long time in the making. This is a set of slides that has been 10 years in the making. I would tell you the story why this is. And just to emphasize what Anja said, please just jump in. Let's make this a conversation. So when you have any questions, just unmute yourself and ask right away. Okay, let's talk about Provoke. Let me start with this one here, because this will be a little bit weird today. So this is a quote by the social scientist Pierre Bourdieu. He wrote a book on the social definition of photography, in photography, a middlebrow art. So he is someone who comes from a social perspective, from the perspective of social science into photography. And this is, I highly recommend this to read this, because he has a concept of photography that has not a lot of things to do with art, or this is not the thing that he's interested in, but he is interested in how societies use photography. And he made this, as these social scientists are, they are very number oriented. So he made these kinds of surveys, and he found out 78% of the photos have a sunset on them, or 76 are landscape, a little girl playing with a cat. So these are what most people are photographing. And this, I found this very interesting. This was a survey from the 70s. Probably if you do this today, it's probably a little bit different. You get, of course, tons of selfies right now, and which brings us to the idea that photography changes over time, changes over society, changes with cultural background, and changes sometimes quite drastically. This, of course, the need to perform in front of a camera and to stage yourself, this is very much how we are today. And when Bourdieu was doing this in the 70s, the way that the society was formed was very different there. So a first communion, I don't know how many first communion pictures you still have today. So as I said, this is a very personal edition of the photo book show, 10 years in the making. Let me try to explain. So this is the Miyanomori Art Museum Sapporo in 2016. I was together with my wife. We went to Japan. We went first to Tokyo, and then we spent about a week on Hokkaido. And if you have ever been to Japan, what strikes me the most are these striking differences. So Tokyo is totally overwhelming. It's a total overload of visual and audio input. So we were completely floored when we arrived at Hokkaido, and Hokkaido is very different. It's a different island. It's much quieter. We went to a little hostel somewhere in the countryside, so there was basically no one around. And the first thing we did in Sapporo, when we spent one night in Sapporo, which is a main city in Hokkaido, we walked around and we stumbled upon this tiny little museum. It's really it's only 2 floors, and it's not much bigger than my living room, but on 2 floors. So it's really tiny. And what we have seen there is this one. This is a book Daidō Moriyama did in 1978. So he went from Tokyo, where he was photographing for most of the time from the bustling city of Tokyo. He went to Hokkaido because he wanted to get away from it all. So what he did was he brought his camera and brought, I think, 80 rolls of film, and spent there almost a year just to calm him down. And this is roughly how it looks. So this was one exhibition that completely floored me. So if you have seen the Moriyama or the Provoke photographs, you absolutely need to see prints of them hanging in an exhibition, because it is completely different. Today we will be talking about books, of course, but it's completely different when you see them hanging in a museum. There is a kind of de-skilling going on in Japanese photography at that time. So people were making rough, blurry, out of focus shots, and this crashed into a long tradition of photographic craftsmanship. And this is something that you only see when you see actual prints hanging in a museum. So what we did there, we spent a whole day in this tiny museum that had only a few prints in there. And so they had these huge chairs in there. So basically we were sleeping there, then waking up, looking at images, and sleeping again. So, and that is how the day went. And these are the pictures that we've seen. So these are the pictures that we have seen from Moriyama that he shot in Hokkaido there. And you already see that this is landscape photography. So this is very different from the pictures that Moriyama had been doing until this time, because it was a place, he was looking for a place of relaxation there. So you see stuff like this, sunflowers. And I found this fascinating because this is what you see when you go outside of the museum. So this is how it looks like there. And I was totally floored by this. I was right at the beginning of my photography, so I had no idea how photography works. And I was floored by the idea that you can photograph pretty much everything. So like this fish head that was hanging there in this museum, and it was a giant fish. Of course, he made a book. Even the book was inside there, and it was really this. When you see it, it is huge and contains this huge, masterfully wonderful prints. And this was, when I look back at my photography, I have rarely experienced moments that had this kind of radical before and after. So before I was photographing this, after this I was photographing something completely different. And that has nothing to do with quality. That has something to do with what I photographed. So before I photographed, I have to confess, I have my decent share of sunsets in my photographic library. Of course I do that. Sunset, sunrise, of course I do that. I did that. We all do that. But after that, I had this. So we went to the fish market in Tokyo afterwards. So I brought back my own kind of fishes. I brought back these kinds of shots where I just shot into the people, so there were no faces on there. So it was completely different. It was I was closer to people. I looked at things completely different afterwards. Of course, it is not that easy that you can say, okay, I look at a Daidō Moriyama show, I buy myself a Leica, and then I'm a great photographer. No, that is not the point here. The point is going from this here to the idea of expanding the realm of what can be photographed. So the idea that everything that surrounds you, everything that you see in the city can be photographed. And for me, this is what Moriyama did. So he introduced a lot of stuff into this list of things here that have never been on this kinds of lists here. So, and of course, my photography afterwards changed, but when I look back at my photography, I really see Moriyama's take on the world. I see that resurfacing time and time and again. And it's shocking to me when I look at this and look at my tryouts of imitating Moriyama, how close I was trying to get to Moriyama to see, yeah, okay, there's a fish, let's also do a fish. Of course, this is how photography works. You start out with imitation. You start out with the things that you adore and try to imitate them. It is the sincerest form of flattery. So I owe Moriyama a lot. And this is why I said, okay, this talk is 10 years in the making. Provoke. This is basically a magazine that came out in '68. It is weird because it had only three issues, so it ran for no longer than 2 years. There's the fourth issue, which was a book that contained some additional images, but basically that's it. It's 3 issues and nothing else. So, and it had this subtitle, Provocative Materials for Thought. It was an experimental small press Japanese photography magazine founded in '68. It was founded by Kōji Taki, Takuma Nakahira, which we will come to in a minute, and it had assembled some photographers that were always hanging out together. They had a similar approach to the world, were frequenting the same bars in Shinjuku, which is basically the red light district of Tokyo. They were talking about the same things. They were reading the same books. '68 was in Japan, like everywhere in the world. It was a time of extreme social, political unrest. So we had in Tokyo, there were student protests that were revolting against the establishment, like everywhere else in the world. So this is a great picture by Shamai Tomatsu. He made a book on this protest, and of course, Daidō Moriyama, Takuma Nakahira, they were young people at that moment, so they were together with the students in the protest. So they were fighting against the police that tried to repress this protest. And this is the reason why I brought up Bourdieu and the idea that photography is always embedded in a social environment, much like Provoke was embedded in the social environment of the protest movements of '68. And much more than this, than documenting these protests, they set out to document a kind of lifestyle that they were leading. They were fast. They were reckless. There was a lot of drinking involved. So this was the era that was governed by this idea of are bureboke. I will probably slaughter a lot of Japanese today, which basically means rough, blurry, out of focus. So Provoke was trying to provoke thought. It was also trying to provoke language. And this is an interesting aspect of this, because Takuma Nakahira, who was kind of the intellectual mastermind behind Provoke, he wrote most of the articles in there and wrote a lot of essays and was providing some kind of a theoretical foundation for what the Provoke photographers were doing. He was talking about inventing a new language that was able to transport the speed and the recklessness of a new society that was emerging in this moment. Of course, they were also trying to provoke society, the Japanese society, just most societies that were part of these student revolts at that time. They were extremely conservative. They were extremely uptight. So nudity was frowned upon. So it was, of course, they tried to provoke everybody who was looking at these photos. And they also tried to provoke a photographic tradition that was coming before them. When you pick up your photograph, when you pick up your camera, you will, most of the time, you will use a camera that comes from Japan. So basically, Japan is technically the country that serves most of our photographic gear that we use today. There are rarely any outliers. I mentioned Leica, who come from Germany, but everybody else, like Fujifilm and Nikon, they all come from Japan. And this is a long tradition of craftsmanship, not only technical craft, not only craftsmanship in the gear, but also in a craftsmanship of producing wonderful, beautiful prints. And to go with this, against this, with something that is rough, blurry, out of focus, that is, of course, a provocation towards the photographic establishment of the time. And I think this is super important to understand, as Moriyama was not the establishment. Nakahira was not the establishment. They were rebels against this establishment. Even after these three issues, they continued to make photographs, of course. This is one of the most important photographic books of the 1970s, For a Language to Come, which not only has beautiful photographs, but also has groundbreaking essays on how photography can provoke language. Because this is what they were after. They were after inventing a new language for photography. This is a set of essays that Nakahira started writing around that time. So like we all know that after 68 and the enthusiasm of the student process, the enthusiasm of this freedom in all parts of society, in women's liberation, in sexual liberation, in cultural liberation, in racial and gender equality, there was after that a huge hangover and a huge backlash. And Nakahira felt that backlash just like everybody else. So he wrote this essay where he wondered, has Provoke been working? And he comes to the conclusion, in nearly 2 years, have the photograph presented in Provoke been able to revive language in the end? Regrettably, my answer to this question would have to be rather negative. So this is the situation of Moriyama and Nakahira. They were suffering a hangover, and of course, they were outcast by this photographic establishment. So at the beginning, they were not very successful with Provoke. That only came later. And that eventually brought Nakahira to almost drink himself to death. And in 1973, he was so critical about his own work and about the work of of Provoke that he burned all his negatives. So the book For a Language to Come is basically all we have from the photograph that he did at that time. And to start with let me show you a quick excerpt from a documentary about Nakahira that was made shortly before his death.
決まった時刻に家を出て撮影に出かける。行く先は自宅から近い横浜近郊。鎌倉や葉山まで足を伸ばすこともある。退院後、中平が記した一文。まず何よりも、私、写真家である。ということに固執し続けております。その一点を、私、放棄することは全く不可能です。まさにそれゆえに、私が生き始めた生の原点こそ、私が写真家である一点である、と思考し抜いております。
こういうとこなんだよ。
写真家になったばかりの20代の頃、中平は同じ逗子市に住んでいた森山とこの海へよく遊びに来た。二人で写真への夢を語り続けた。
森山さんと同い年でしょう。
同い年。
同い年。
うん、森山知ったからね。
昔はよく一緒にいたんでしょ。まあ昔のことはあれかもしれないけ
うん潜ってたね、うちの。
え
潜ってた。
どこで
滝に潜る。
一緒に
来るね。
2003年、中平は横浜美術館で初めての本格的な個展を開いた。私、素朴な写真家に舞い戻りました。今、ここにあることの原点を凝視して、中平は写真を撮り続けている。
I wanted to show you this this short clip. I get extremely sentimental when I look at these kind of these pictures from Nakahira. They were the last some of the last pictures that Nakahira was taking. He died in 2015. And I found this always to be that always moves me a lot because he came back from almost the brink of death in 73. He lost most of his memory, so he had to relearn photography again. And it's interesting to see that the trajectories of these two photographers, they took very different turns. So while Moriyama was starting his international career at that time, Nakahira was long, pretty much forgotten. And I find this words that he found his way back into photography, but in a completely changed way, breaking away from Provoke. I always find this very moving, and it's always moving to see that this is always very close to what they do. First and foremost, I continue to insist that I'm a photographer. This is what they thought of themselves. They thought of themselves as being photographers. And he returned to this kind of naive photography that is just amazed to look at the world and see how beautiful the world actually is. So he made this very naive photographs. And in the clip, it was mentioned that he had his first major exhibition in 2003. As I mentioned, a lot of the time Nakahira was almost forgotten and was almost written out of the photographic history. That is pretty much the same trajectory that Provoke did. So Provoke had a renaissance in the 80s. So that was when people rediscovered what they have been doing. And this is photography that is very different from what you find in Provoke. He did not process the color negatives or print from them himself. He wanted to move all expression to discard entirely the Provoke characteristics. His photography is an absolute necessity for him, having forgotten everything. And this is what he came up with, these kinds of simple, straightforward photography. I believe that photography is neither creation nor memory, but documents the acts of shooting. A photograph is not something abstract. It is always concrete, no manipulation to make simple things complicated through conceptualization, only the real. I encountered through the medium of the camera is here in my photographs. No manipulation, make simple things complicated through conceptualization. It's a very different photography. Only the real is here. Which brings us to the book, and let me show you some of the books that they did. Oh, okay, and I see what I'm doing here. So this is the Provoke Bible, pretty much. So this is a book that Daidō produced in 21, I guess. I guess it was 21. This is a documentary on the Provoke movement. It has, in the middle of it, it has a reprint of the original magazine. It's not as it was in the magazine, but it is. But at least now we have it. So I was so happy to get this kind of book here. So here you see, this was Provoke 3, and they have a replica of this, a facsimile print of this. And here you see all the books, all the photos, and all the papers, all the pages of the original Provoke. So this is one part of it. The other part of it is a long introductory passage that talks about the unrest, the student protests, the idea to give you some kind of setting for social setting for this whole movement there. So this contains an enormous amount of information. So where it comes from, how it went, how which kind of photographers came out of this. Like here, it is Aiko Ozue with Kamaitachi, famous book that came out of this idea of performance. He was associated with Provoke, but was not part of it. So if you want to know anything about the time, or if you want to know everything about the Provoke time, see all the important pictures, this is a book to go for. You have to find out if you can still get it, because at Steil it is out of print. I hope they do a second, I hope they make a second edition of this. But this is, as you see it, it's huge. It has everything, and it's a wonderful book. It's wonderfully printed. everything you ever wanted. And as I mentioned, I always crack up when I look at this Nakahira video here. One of the reasons is, for me, Nakahira is the intellectual base of Provoke. He did this here at Circulation Date Place events. He did this for the Biennale of Photography in Paris in '72. Basically what he did, he was so frustrated with photography. But he was tasked with being the Japanese representative on the Biennale. So what he did, he did not bring a single picture to Paris. Instead, he went one night earlier, and he went photographing on the streets, printed everything in the morning, and hung it up in the, I think it was in Les Halles at that time, where the exhibition was. He hung up the drying negatives in the exhibition space. And they were started to crumble down when he was finished. So these were, I don't know, there's a picture in here somewhere where you can see it. So here you see it. These are, this is where he was hanging his photos, and they were always crumbling down. And he invited people to pick the photos they liked, and they could just take the pictures with them. And this is the kind of photography that he did. He was just walking, dancing through the Paris streets and photographing everything that he saw. This is how we can understand Provoke. Provoke is not about what comes out of the picture, but it is the performance. The performance of taking the picture is part of every project. And this is just an amazing document here of this exhibition. And in contrast to how we otherwise look at photography, there is no single image in here. So everything belongs together. You cannot pick out one of the images here and say, okay, this is a better image than the other. No, it's all in the performance here. Yeah, and it's a sick book because there is no editing. The editing is, I go out photographing at night, I come back in the morning and I have everything. I hang up everything that I have. So this is his take on the preciousness of the print, the preciousness of photography. But let us get back to the reason why we did this here. So the reason why we do it now is this one here. This is a book that just came out this year. A book by Thames and Hudson called Quartet, because it assembles the first 4 books that Moriyama did after leaving Provoke. So this has a photo theater. It has a Hunter, which is probably the most important book, the most well-known book by Daidō Moriyama. It has Farewell Photography and Light and Shadow. And these are books Moriyama made after he left Provoke, after Provoke ended. So these 4 books that you see here. These are the books from which Moriyama had to recover on Hokkaido. So what you see here is basically the bustle of Tokyo, the Tokyo streets, the people that he met, the billboards. And when I talk about expanding the realm of photography, at that time, like everywhere else in the world, media started coming up with their own worlds. So he was starting to photograph cinemas. He was starting to photograph newspapers. But this is, so he even was in an adult cinema and he was photographing there. So this was basically not only photographing, making direct photos, but making photos of people who are consuming the media that surround us. This is why I see a lot of performers in this here. All this is done in Shinjuku. This is all the nightlife. And when we talk about arebore, so rough, blurry, and out of focus, this is what Moriyama is doing at that time. Most of the time, he is not actually looking through the viewfinder. So also for him, it is very important. The choreography of moving through the street is part of every book that he does. So it's this kind of burlesque shows, the red light districts, but also this one. This is an important picture in here because this is the up and coming generation of that time. This is how they are living in these tracts, and these are this is how they are brought up, and these are the houses. So Moriyama was photographing a kind of lifestyle, so a way of how do you feel in the city. He was not interested in what is there in the city, but how do you feel in the city. And let me come to one important image here. They were close. So they were hanging out all the time. So this is why they were. This is why we find Nakahira here in this shot. That was a certain way of life. Going out, drinking, making photos, going to bars, going to performances, meeting people. So they have been living this life together. But again, this here, so this is always the tension that Moriyama is working with. This is this society that has a very that is very heteronormal, has a very heteronormal concept of how life is to be. Get married, get kids, get a flat here. This is what they have been revolting against. This is Hunter. Hunter is probably one of the most important books of Moriyama. He did Hunter after reading Jack Kerouac's On the Road. So this is why these are road pictures. He wanted to do the same thing that Jack Kerouac did, but he did it in Japan. So he was taking out his car and he's been driving around Japan for, I think, 2 years. And he was making these kinds of casual photographs that he saw in there. And this is interesting because Japan had been secluded and has much more tension between a traditional society and the influx of media and American culture there. So this is when the world was starting to shrink. So Japanese photographers were reading Kerouac. Lots of the images pay tribute to William Klein, who had visited Tokyo at that time. So there was starting to be a back and forth between America and Japan at that time. And this is homage to his other important work. So this is a series that he did on accident pictures that he pulled from a newspaper. So this is not Moriyama's shot. This is a shot Moriyama did from a newspaper print. And in the original Provoke, he photographed and rephotographed this newspaper snippet all over again. So, and in contrast to, where do I have it? In contrast to this one, which has an idea of editing that says, I don't do editing at all. Moriyama has been editing meticulously. So these kinds of juxtapositions that you see here, this is no accident to put this kind of spectacle, the culture of prominent people that you see here, right next to the picture of an accident. All of this was part of a spectacle. So, and I just put this quote here. So shortly, right at this time, James Graham Ballard wrote Crash, a book that is about people who are fetishizing car crashes. So they are restaging car crashes from James Dean or Jean Harlow. So all of this at this time was connected by spectacle.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Sure.
You mentioned William Klein.
Yes.
I don't know who that is or what his influence was.
William Klein was at that time was a photographer who photographed in the 50s. There's the famous book he did. New York is good. New York is good and good for you. Famous book on that basically invented street photography as we knew it, as we know it today. So he was one of the first American photographers who did street photography. And he came to visit Japan in the 60s, in the early 60s. And he had this, he showed his book, New York is good for you. He showed it in this photobook clubs.
Oh, okay.
And there was a lot of connections between them. So he influenced a lot of people, among them also Daidō Moriyama, who had seen his photos, and he started making very similar photos, but transformed everything to Japan.
Thank you.
So again, I love this book. I'm so grateful that this book came out because the original book, they are hard to get. That has you get a lot of reprints from Japan. So the original Hunter Farewell to Photography, they are reprinted in Japan, but they are ridiculously hard to get from Japan. So whenever you get to Japan, just pick 5 or 6 of the reprints, because you can always sell them here in probably in the US, but certainly also here in Germany. So I'm very happy that this came out, and it's a really good reprint with this high glossy, almost Barita kind of paper here that really fits the images and the style of the images. So if you need an introduction to the early work of Moriyama, this is the way to go. Which brings me to this one here. I think we already mentioned this. This is why I really only want to show it. Moriyama, just like everybody else in the 70s, he is known for his black and white photography, but he has always been photographing in color photography. And there is this book, Now and Never Again, Daidō Moriyama in Color, that came out a couple of years ago, that brings together these color photography from him. And it's always, I always find it weird to see Moriyama photographing in color, because I so much associate him with the Provoke era and with his with this way of shooting, and this is different. So this is one of the key pictures in there, which I did not know that he even shot it in in color because all the prints that were in circulation usually convert this image to black and white. But he was doing this, and it's an interesting way to look at his images because color always transports a different nowness in the pictures. And this is why I think the title is very fitting, because it has, when black and white has a certain timelessness, this always says, okay, it's this period of the 70s. It always has this colors of the 70s.
How did he make a living?
He eventually became famous.
Okay.
So in contrast to Nakahira, where I actually I have no idea how he survived the 70s, because he had this terrible illness, he had this terrible coma that he was in, so he tried to recover from this. Moriyama eventually became famous, so he did things like covers for even recently he did a cover for Kanye West.
Oh, okay.
That is not so long ago. So eventually he became famous. So eventually he made a living out of that.
Stefan, there was an interesting art movement that this Provoke really fits nicely into, called Fluxus.
Yeah.
Which took place in Japan. Yoko Ono was one of the major proponents of it. Germany, Japan, the United States. It was also very anti-establishment. And I think this seems to fit into that broader movement.
Fluxus came a little bit later, but you're completely right. This is why this is so good, because Provoke eventually turned into performance art. So there's a lot of stuff going on inside Provoke and the Japanese culture after that, where performance is very important, and the photograph then becomes only a document of the artwork, which is of the actual artwork, which is a performance that took place. And this is something that you can see with Aiko Hosoe, for example. He is someone who bridges this gap between traditional Japanese Buto theater and modern movements of performance art. So he photographed a famous Budo dancer and made these kinds of performance photographs.
And didn't you once show a photograph of a guy jumping off a building? I think it was in Japan, wasn't it? Or was that in Germany?
That, I think, was Yves Klein.
That was Klein.
That was Klein, yeah. The thing that you mentioned. But yeah, the 60s were pretty much the time when the world started to shrink, and these kinds of art movement that were isolated and took place in Japan and Germany and mostly New York and San Francisco, when they started to merge. Yeah, so good point with Fluxus. So there is a line there that goes from Provoked over performance to Yoko Ono and to the Beatles that eventually broke up Fluxus.
Right.
And let me quickly show you one of my most favorite books. This is Adieu AX. This is the title of the documentary from which I show you the clip. This is a book, the first book that Nakahira did when he was recovering. So when he was trying to learn photography all over again. And I always love this book because it brings this directness to photography and this naivety that Nakahira was talking about in this clip. And when you remember this shot of the surf and the sea, this is how Nakahira was photographing at that time. He did these long walks and he photographed what he was seeing outside. And he was much quieter. So the images are much quieter and they're much more about the simplicity and the beauty of the things that he sees. And the directness, and it is a completely different feel from Provoke. You see some similarities, you see where he comes from, but he actually started these with the cat pictures. So this is one of my favorite books, and I just want to show you what he did before he almost drank himself to death. This is Overflow. Nakahira is weird because I said as Moriyama was experimenting with color photography, Nakahira was also experimenting with color photography in the 70s. So these were shots that he did in the 70s, and these were almost forgotten and never seen until 2004. Don't nail me on it. When he started to become famous again. So this is when he started working with other curators, and they assembled these kinds of this kind of exhibition, which is, as the title suggests, the idea of overflow, the idea that whatever you encounter in the city, you are no longer able to process it. And it starts overflowing and it starts juxtaposing in weird kinds of assemblies. And this is a wonderful way to show photos in a different way from just a frame and a lot of white space. He just pins the prints directly to the wall and works with this kinds of juxtapositions. And the book ties into this idea by repeating these kinds of juxtapositions where two images are just tied flushly are just printed flush against each other. And they form these kinds of abstract shapes here. And you see them repeating here. So this is a wonderful book because, as you see, it is also huge, which contributes to this idea. You can just use it and make your own exhibition with it.
So I wanted to ask you, what came to my mind seeing these books, they're wonderful. Did they edit them themselves, or did they work with somebody? How did they put them together? And you just, went to that, how this one is put together and, woven together, and very interesting.
This is Japanese photography is always a weird mix of that. They have all kinds of approaches. As I mentioned, Moriyama was the first 4 books that he did, Hunter, Farewell to Photography, and Light and Shadow. They are meticulously sequenced, and he put it all together by himself. So this is really his way of juxtaposing, sequencing, rhythmic, adding rhythm to it. I mentioned here, no editing, because you can't edit the city. There's no way to cope with what the city throws at you. So the edit is basically, I'm weirdly choreographing through the city. This one was Nakahira together with an editor and with a curator. They did the show together. They did the book together. It is at this point hard to say what was Nakahira's contribution, what was the contribution of the curator here. But yeah, that is a valid question. Everything. And let me end on this one here. So Moriyama had a long-lasting influence on a lot of people, and This is a book that came out in 2000. I don't know, this is already a little bit older. Where a lot of companions, people Moriyama worked with, people that owe a lot to Moriyama's and Provoke's influence, they came together to make this kind of book so everybody gets a double spread to say thank you to Moriyama. So this is Nobuyoshi Araki, somebody who was friends with Moriyama for quite some time. He did this double split. This is Jakob Auer-Sobol. When you look at his images, you immediately see the influences. You see how close Sobol is, but you see in the way that he treats his negatives, the way he treats his images, how indebted he is to Moriyama. This is Cas Clement, Belgian photographer. This is Antoine Dagata, who of course owes a lot to Provoke. This is Jeho Engström, Swedish photographer, lives in Paris, also owes a lot to him. And you have writers, you have writers like Gary Badger commenting on this. You have photographers, and you also, of course, have Takuma Nakahira, who brought some of his documentary from some of his late photographs to this book. It's a fun little project that brings together different photographers and shows the lasting influence that Moriyama and especially Moriyama, but also Provoke in general, had on this on many photographers. This is it. This is all I have for you today. So mostly on time.
Very inspiring, as always.
Thank you.
I love that kind of the freedom of the eye, and yeah, it's really great. And the black and white especially.
Yeah, and I had to look this up, but it was 68. And you see these, you pick this up, you pick up this book and are so reminded these were, the times were so different. And it's suddenly this movement where the whole world was opening. There's this German saying, der Muff von 1000 Jahren unter den Talaren. So it's the air of 1,000 years underneath the robes of our judges.
Sure. And see, now it's this fashion thing, fashion, and this is the freedom of the moment. And it's really just inspires me to take my little camera, go out and sort of, I walk the beach, I walk the same place here in Helsinki. Now I look at it in a different kind of way, it's great.
Well, that is always what I think is an important point about Japanese photography, about the Provoke area, and especially. We are in the West. We are so focused on results. We're so focused on artifacts of the artwork that comes out of this. And you look at these images, like this is why circulation date place events is so important. It is about us. It is about us, the photographer. We are part of the artwork when we walk through the city and take photos, and we interact with people, we interact with the city. This is always some kind of performance, a kind of performative act. And the image that you get from this is just the shallow husk of our existence in the city as photographers. And this is different from, you got wonderful big pictures hanging in the museum. You can't recover existence in a photograph.
Are there
great.
any other questions from anybody?
Hello,
Gordon.
Stefan.
I got him.
Hi. Fantastic. I enjoyed that a
Thank
lot, and I saw a
you.
lot of books I hadn't seen before. Nakahira, he says, I continue to insist that I am a photographer. So that just that's like
Wonderful.
like nailing it on the church door.
Yeah.
What um do you think that's he's talking about a primacy of being a photographer over being an artist or anything else? Or is he situating it within art? Um, I'm kind of curious on your take on that.
I especially in his later years, when he, I think when he gave up this idea to provoke language and to change language and to change society and focus more on recording your immediate surrounding. I think that was a point when he was trying not to make something, but to become a camera, to become something that just records. This is why he's always talking about there is no intervention afterwards. So you do not, you try to erase the hand. Eventually, he even tried to erase his own hand that takes a photograph. This is why he's so. This is why his images get increasingly simpler in his later work. And I think this, in a way, leaves the idea of art behind. So the idea of art being, yeah, you have to produce something, you have to produce an artifact, you have to produce a photo book, or you have to produce something that you can hang on the wall. This is, for me, this is no longer the point for him.
That makes sense. Thank you. I'll think
But
about that.
watch the video. So the video is, it's really quite moving. So
I had a question. In these retrospective type books of Daido Moriyama, I was curious about their structure. Like you mentioned that Daido himself sequenced and narrated his four first books, but now we have these, the color book which you showed. They are like edited by curators, and like there's a pictures from like all sorts of projects. So I was just curious about their structure and are they like single prints or single pairs of images? Like I also heard many people say like they don't sense any narrative in them, and these four books which you said maybe had narrative.
That is a good question. We should do a single workshop just on sequencing of Daidō Moriyama books. Let's pick out this one. This is Hunter, and Hunter is modeled after On the Road. So this book by Jack Kerouac. So it has pretty much the idea of a road movie. And it is very close. And we have a couple of famous road movies in photography. The most prominent probably being The Americans, which is, of course, also a road movie where Robert Frank was driving through America. And this is follows this loose structure that road movies have. So you get into your car, you meet different people. The people are besides the road. There is a lot of driving in there. This is why you have these roads all the time. So this is this kind of rhythm in there. But if you look at the book by Kerouac, when you read through this does not really have this also doesn't really have a narrative arc. It just I get into my car, I meet a lot of people. There's some weird stuff happening. I meet some people, I lose sight of people, and everything is happening on the road, hence the title. So this is the other part of this performative aspect. So like these kinds of juxtapositions here where you see, okay, I'm driving on the road, I'm getting out of my car. I hear a noise above me. There's a plane above me. And then I look, then I hear a child crying and I look down onto the child. So a lot of the images that you see here, they follow this movement over the road and the encounters, this chance encounter that you have on the road. And of course, it's brilliantly sequenced with this and this being aligned here. So this is his road movie. This is why you have these kinds of, yeah, and let's get back on the road and let's meet the bikers that you see here. Get a new watch. So this is the way that he sequenced here. And this is what made him famous. This kind of photography, this kind of sequencing, this kind of careful sequence, and this picking up of important tropes of the time and weaving it together with this narrative of a road trip. But really, this is why this is so important. You have to go through the books in detail. They have microstructures, they have rhythm, they have macrostructures in them. So there's a lot of stuff to unpack.
You think he left a lot out? And what's happened? Is there an archive of photos that he didn't put in the books? Is there a collection somewhere, in Japan or wherever?
Well, Moriyama is still pretty much alive. So he's still on the road. So he's now, he's 87 now.
Yeah, he's getting it.
And he's still doing this kind of photography. He's been a little bit away from this idea of careful sequencing, picking out stuff. What he does today is records. So he has practically every year, he brings out a collection, a small collection of his images and calls it record. And he's now at record number 57. So he has 57 of these little books that document the last 50 years of his life. So I don't know if he leaves out a lot of stuff. No, I think he prints pretty much everything that he has.
Yeah,
In one way or another.
doubt that. I don't know, Stefan. All right, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for being here. I hope to see you on Thursday for Fred Richin's talk. And again, reach out to me if you have questions about our classes. Stefan, thank you so much. And I don't know if there will be another photo book show before the end of the year because we have too much going on, but let's see, maybe. Otherwise, there will be one at the beginning in January.
Yes.
We will let you know.
Thank you so much for being here.